Hello everybody, this is General Yanis, and today in Death Card Tactics I'm looking at a beginner's guide or a new player's guide to Death Card. So welcome to Nurgle's and Mortarion's finest and bravest soldiers. So let's get started. So today, the 19th of February, an unexpected gift. Praise Nurgle, my Codex and my packet over a month underway has finally arrived. So now I finally got my Codex, I got my Miasmic Malignifier, and I got some paint, which I want to try some new paint things on my Death Card. So really was not expecting that. I had lost all hope, but Papa Nurgle delivers at last. So in this video, I will be making a new player-friendly overview of Death Card. I will be looking at the Death Card background history or story, let's say, the Death Card trademark abilities, let's say, what are the strong and weak points of the army, a units overview, what units do we have access to, how can we be starting to collect, what should be in our collection, or how should we think some ideas for the collection and the army building, some overall ideas. And of course, I'm not claiming to have the only truth here, that there is only one list that works, but this is my opinions and my thoughts of something to consider while collecting Death Card. So the idea is to give you some overall thoughts, and then on top of this, there is much more detailed information to be found in the channel, more about specific units, the weapon options, plague companies, tactics, strategies, etc. So let's take a look. So starting with the background history of the Death Card, the story of the 14th Legion. The Death Card was the 14th Legion of the original founded Space Marines. The Primarch Mortarion grew up on the planet Barbarus, a very toxic place where alien warlords ruled over the poor human population on the planet, and Mortarion was used by these alien warlords to suppress the humans even more. But thankfully, Mortarion soon rebelled and formed a resilient resistance, a brutal fighting infantry force of the humans, taking the fight to these alien warlords. As the Emperor arrived to find Mortarion, to reunite Mortarion with his legion of Space Marines that time, he killed the final alien overlord, stealing Mortarion's moment of glory and the revenge that Mortarion wanted over this alien warlord. So Mortarion had a resentment towards the Emperor. He was also resentful about psychic abilities, and his resentment grew over time, and he was one of the first legions to switch side in the Horus heresy, or if we are chaos, the word of liberation, let's say, on the good side of joining the chaos forces, let's say. As Death Guard were heading to Terra for the final fight versus the Emperor's legions, the first captain of the Death Guard, Typhon Callas, now Typhus, had the fleet stuck in the warp intentionally, and then the whole fleet of Death Guard fell victims, or were blessed, if you see it on the other way, by Nurgle's destroyer diseases. And the Legion fared a terrible agony, as their resilience prevented them from dying from all this disease that was upon them. And finally, Mortarion, suffering so much, gave in to Nurgle, promising the Death Guard to the grandfather Nurgle and achieving demonhood. And then the Legion increased their power, and Mortarion became from this guy to this demon Primarch, let's say. In the years after the Horus Heresy, the Death Guard has retained much of its organization over the 10,000 years, and from its base on the Plague Planet and other bases around the galaxy, launches offensives that are feared really feared across the galaxy. So, looking at the Death Guard trademarks, the strong and weak points, the biggest strong point, or let's say the biggest trademark for Death Guard, in my opinion, is the resilience of the army. So this means that our infantry has a typical toughness 5 compared to toughness 3 or 4 for other armies' infantry units. and this means that normal light anti-infantry fire weapons, for example, typically strength 3 or 4, only wound us on a 5+. So just off the bat, with a toughness 5, our units are much more durable than normal equivalent infantry from other armies. Nearly all of our units have the disgusting resilience ability, which reduces the incoming damage by -1. So a damage 2 weapon becomes a damage 1 weapon, a damage 3 weapon becomes a damage 2 weapon, but a damage 1 weapon, of course, still becomes a damage 1 weapon. But this can be quite helpful also to increase our durability and our resilience. And our vehicles, our tanks and flyers and etc. are typically demon engines, and then being demons, they also have 5+ inval saves. So they are all of this makes Death Guard notoriously hard to remove from the tabletop. So this is, let's say, our big trump card is our resilience. And then another trademark is that we have access to plague weapons. So many of our weapons are plague weapons, which have a natural reroll of 1s to wound, which of course increases our efficiency. And this can also combine with other abilities to do even more damage. So the plague weapons, of course, are a handy tool in the hands of the Death Guard. And then the new rules for our new codex is now that the Death Guard army has contagions, and it's an army-wide ability that gives enemies a -1 toughness, which are within contagion range, and can be really helping our damage output. For example, bringing Space Marine toughness 4 down to toughness 3, then a lot of our weapons are wounding very easily as the enemy's toughness is suffering from being close to the contagions and the concoctions of the Death Guard virulent attacks. And then on top of this, we have also additional interesting contagions available to our warlords, either giving buffs to our enemies or putting the enemy in even further disability. Overall, we are stronger in melee combat compared to ranged combat, and we have some good psychic powers. We are not in the top of the psychers, but we all in all, we are represented in the psychic phase, and it's in the melee and shorter range that the Death Guard shines. In ranged combat, there are other armies that are better equipped and have better tools to have a very efficient gun line, for example. Overall, a good thing with Death Guard, of course, is that we really have some cool looking models, and you can just take some of the Plague Marines and you can look at all these details of these models. You can count the maggots, the bells, the tentacles, the intestines whipping out of our Plague Marines and the Plague Burst Crawlers, and a lot of our units look really cool and have a very distinctive look upon them with a lot of detail. And if you like this sort of iconography, they're really nice they're really interesting and cool looking models. The weak point of our army is that we are quite slow. Most of our units have only a 5-inch move. It's not so easy for us to buff our movement. We have some abilities that we can at least not be slowed down, but we are not super fast. We don't have very fast flyers or jet bikes or things that can move very fast. So it's more a slow, resilient mass of wounds walking ahead towards the enemy. But of course, we have also fast units. But all in all, we are a quite slow army, but very resilient. Looking at our units overview, I tried a graphical presentation this time instead of tables. So here I'm trying to illustrate what type of units we have access to, starting here with the battlefield role, the Lord of War. Our Demon Primarch Mortarion is a very cool model and can do substantial damage in melee. As far as headquarter HQ units are concerned, which we normally would need at least 2 to fill the battalion, we have basically 6 different models for the 6 different units that are lords. And this is a problem introduced in the new codex, that we can only have one out of these lords of death card. So we have a Daemon Prince, we have Typhus, we have Lord of Contagion, Lord of Virulence, Chaos Lord, and then we have Chaos Lord in Terminator armor. And these characters, we can only, as I said, only have one in the same detachment with his ability, which makes that our Plaguecaster or Sorcerer, we can also use the Sorcerer, Chaos Sorcerer, they are probably a must-have in our collection to be able to field, for example, battalions. And normally our characters are quite strong in melee combat, and they can buff the other units. And we have something, but now we are suffering this strange jealousy that we cannot bring, for example, a Daemon Prince and a Chaos Lord. Looking at our troop choices, and normally to be able to field the battalion or something, you at least need 3 troop units. We have access to 3 types of troops. The Plague Marines, which is the most, let's say, almost synonymous with Death Guard. The Plague Marines are constituting the backbone of the Death Guard army. So Plague Marines are they have a very nice, very many weapon options, and can be configured quite a lot. And then we have they are this elite type of infantry with toughness 5 and 2 wounds now. So they are quite a tough opponent for the enemy to take down. Then we have our Poxwalkers, which are a type of zombie, less elite, but a cheaper, but still quite durable unit that they can come back from the dead, and if they kill enemy units, they can bolster their ranks, and those are quite good to have in the unit. And then we also have the cultists, the Chaos Cultists, which are less interesting in this edition of the Codex. So typically the Death Guard armies would use Plague Marines and or Poxwalkers as their troops, and let's say the backbone of the army. One limitation that we have gotten with the new Codex is that we cannot take more Poxwalker units than the sum of Plague Marines and Terminator and possessed units in our army. If we move to the elite slot, there we have quite a lot of units to choose from. First, if we look at the squads, we have our Terminators, which are a popular unit to collect and to use. We have our Blightlord Terminators that come in minimum squads of 5, and we have our Deathshroud Terminators that come in minimum squad of 3. And then we have the Chaos Possessed, which comes also in a minimum squad of 5. And the Blightlord Terminators and the Deathshroud Terminators are very durable units. They have 3 wounds, and they have invul saves, and they can deep strike, they can teleport, and especially the Deathshroud are excelling in melee combat. And the Blightlord's Terminators, they have both ranged weapons and melee weapons. And then in the elite's choice, we also have a lot of characters. We have 5 specific Death Guard characters. We have the Taliman, the Plague Surgeon, the Biologous Putrifier, the Foul Blightspawn, and the Noxious Blightbringer, all of which have some interesting auras and abilities that can assist typically our core units, which are the Plague Marines and the Terminators, the Possessed, and the Hellbrute Dreadnought. So I will go into a bit more detail about those a bit later. And then we also have the Hellbrute, which is our Dreadnought. If we look at Forge World alternatives, in the elite class we have some Forge World Dreadnoughts that are probably more damaging or more efficient to put on the field compared to a Hellbrute, but they are also more costly in terms of points, and also in terms of real money to be able to buy them from Forge World models are quite expensive. If we go to fast attack, which is quite important when the rest of our army is quite slow, it's important to have something fast to complement. Then we have the Furtive Blow Drones, the Mephitic Blight Holders, which are demon engines, and then we have the Chaos Spawn, which is a fast and a very hard-hitting foot squad of yeah, it's almost like the possessed, but they are cheaper and they can be equally fast. In the Forge World options, we have the Greater Blight Drone, which is cheaper than the Blow Drone and the Mephitic Blight Holder, but again, it costs more in real world money to get a Greater Blight Drone. If we look at the heavy support units, then we have the iconic Plaguebear Crawler, the Death Guard specific tank, which is really a very nice tank in the game, able to shoot in long range. It has a interesting mortar that can shoot at units that it cannot see, so it has a very good, let's say, usability on the battlefield and very durable. We have the Chaos Defiler that also is in the Chaos Space Marine armies that can be also configured with many weapons. And then we have access to the Chaos Predator and the Chaos Land Raider, which are more normal Chaos vehicles, and not so, let's say, they're not so much Death Guard as, for example, a Plaguebear Crawler. In the flyers, we don't have any specific Death Guard flyer. We can use some flyers from the Forge World, for example, the Hellblade, which I've made a review of. And then if we look at the transport units, this is another way to improve the speed of our units. We have the Chaos Rhino that is shared with the Chaos Space Marines, and the Space Marines, they have the normal Rhino, let's say. The Chaos Rhino can transport Plague Marines and bring them up the field faster. In the Forge World alternatives, we have the Terrax Assault Drill, which is really interesting unit, but again, quite an expensive unit. And then in the Fortifications, we have access to the Miasmic Malignifier, the one that I recently ordered and got. And this fortification could be quite interesting to spread contagions. So this is basically the palette of units that we have access to and that we can build our army across. But how should we start our collection? So starting to collect, I think when I started in the 8th edition, start boxes, the Dark Imperium, the No Fear, and the First Strike were excellent ways to start a collection of Death Guard. If you can get your hands on it today, if you can find it used or some other place where they still are selling those, they are not sold anymore in the Games Workshop, but maybe there is your local store might have. I've read somebody that could find some of these boxes in their local store somewhere or something. I think those are present a good value to start your Death Guard collection. So in the Dark Imperium set, you would be getting 7 Plague Marines. All of them basically have bolters, and one guy has a plasma gun. Then you have 20 Poxwalkers, so you have 2 troop units, or you can make even 3 troop units here. Then you get in the HQ, you get the Lord of Contagion and the Plague Caster, which makes up for a very flexible HQ choices. And the Plague Caster, as you recollect from the previous slide, is basically a must-have in our collection nowadays because the Lords cannot cooperate so well. And then we have a Noxious Blightbringer in the Elite slot, and we also get a 30 Blow Drone to assist us in the fast attack slot. So all in all, a very good starting army with some troops, some HQ, and some fast units. If you would start with a Dark Imperium and then you add some Plaguebear Crawler, maybe you can add some Terminators, you can add some more Plague Marines, you quite easily have a starting battalion you can field. And if you had the easy to build Plague Marines or the First Strike little starting box, the 3 Plague Marines included here, all the easy to build, they complement the other 7 quite well, because here you get a Blight Launcher and then you have another champion, so you could easily make 2 squads of 5 Plague Marines with some special weapons already from the get-go here. If you cannot find the 8th edition start boxes, then of course you have to maybe look at the 9th edition Combat Patrol box. but unfortunately, in my opinion, at least, it's not as good as a starting box as the 8th edition was, and it's also more expensive compared to the 8th edition. So what you get in this combat patrol box is you get 7 multi-part plague marines, which in itself is great. The multi-part plague marines are really nice to build. You have really a lot of special weapon options, and the models look very nice and they're customizable, so it's really nice. But then on top of this, you get 30 poxwalkers, which is useful. It's okay, useful. You get Typhus, which is a named character. So you have only one HQ and you have a named character, and then you get the Biologus Purifier elite character, which is quite nice. But you are lacking in more HQ choices. You have a lot of excess poxwalkers, and you cannot use them immediately in a patrol with this box. And then you would at least need the Chosen of Mortarion box on top of this to have the 2 HQ, because here you would get the Playcaster, and yeah, you also would get the Noxus Blightbringer and the Champion of a Plague Marine, which is basically, yeah, it's basically the spruce from the Dark Imperium, but then now they are charging more for it. And then as above, you can combine and add more units as you go along. But all in all, if you can find the Dark Imperium Death to a reasonable price, I would say that was a better starting point for your collection. So after looking at the start boxes and start collecting, let's talk in more detail about army building and some collection ideas for Death Guard. Some general considerations. I find it personally helpful to think of a battalion structure and the battlefield roles and add units in my collection that supplement the other, and that I can field some different battalions having troops and adding a little bit of flavor with some fast attack, some heavy support, maybe some transport, etc. If you want to chase the meta and always find the best choices, the most optimal choices, then this is always a challenge, as the game changes very fast. Warhammer 40,000, there come a lot of new books and a lot of new rules, and what was really good in the previous edition is probably not so good now, etc. So a lot of people that were, for example, previously fielding a lot of Mephitic Blight holders, now they got a very large point increase, and now they are not as useful. Maybe then you need some blow drones, and then if you go all in on blow drones, maybe next time you need to go more on some other unit and so on. So I think I like to think of adding a variety to my collection, so that in this way, having a little bit of broader collection, at least some of the units will be in a good position, or even some could maybe be in the meta. If we look at the Mortarion, our Lord of War, he's quite an expensive model in points as well as in real life currency, but I think he makes for a nice addition to the collection, and he's a very nice model and looks very intimidating. And now, especially now with our new Codex, he seems to be actually worth the points, and he can be really playable on the table as well, and he's nice to play, he's fun to play. He's an absolute monster in dealing melee damage and very intimidating. So before I had Mortarion in my collection, I didn't use him so much because at that time he was not point effective, but it was nice to have him as the Primarch of the collection in any case. And now I'm really happy because now I can use him more on the tabletop. In the HQ choices, I think it's important that because now of this the jealousy and the Lord of the Death card limitations that we have, a plague caster or a chaos sorcerer seem to be a must-have for any death card collections if we want to be able to field the battalion. The plague caster is a good unit with good psychic powers and the ability to add mortal wounds on top of when he's casting other abilities. So the plague caster is doing a lot of good things on the tabletop, and he's a must-have. So I think you probably need him in your collection. Out of the various type of lords, the Lord of Contagion, at least for me, has jumped from a bottom previously because he was really slow. Now he's faster and he's in a top slot, and I think he's really he has some good use on the table, spreading contagions and doing a lot of good things. Typhus can also be good and has good synergies with Poxwalkers. The Daemon Prince, which was one of the favorite units in the previous, before the Codex, has been slightly nerfed, while the Lord of Virulence, the new model, adds some in their ranged firepower, and basically all of them can be quite useful. So I think here you probably need to find your own preference. The Chaos Lord is the cheapest option. Unfortunately for the Chaos Lord, there is no good death card model, though probably it's better to make your own or kit bash something so that it looks a bit more more death card. If we continue to the troops, the Plague Marines, as I mentioned, is probably the spine of the army in most cases, basically the backbone, unless we want to go Terminators and Poxwalkers instead. The Plague Marines are a good Swiss Army knife type of unit, and they can be really configured to either be to have, for example, very good range damage or more melee oriented, and they can be significantly buffed by the other characters and the lords of the Death Guard. They have good durability per point, and they are a bit slow, but they can be transported in for example, Chaos Rhinos. So basically, they are like a jack of all trades for us. They can hold objectives, they can take objectives in the midfield of the table, they can do melee damage, they can do a lot of work on the battlefield, and I always like to bring quite a lot of Plague Marines in my lists. The standard bolter weapon has a bit underwhelming damage, but is of course the cheapest option. The Blight Launcher is the most damage efficient long range weapon, and the Flail of Corruption is the most damage efficient melee weapon. So here you can also watch my video on the weapon review of the Plague Marines. So in my opinion, this is what I've done with my Plague Marines. I want to have a collection of Plague Marines where you are able to mix and match squads with special weapons as required. So in my example, I have a total of 50 Plague Marines. 5 or 6 of those are champions with a bit different champion weapons. And then I have a variety of special weapons. I have maybe 5, 6. I have a couple of flails, I have a couple of blight launchers, I have a couple of plasma guns, I have some melta, some axes, etc. And then I can mix and match together with half of them being just the standard guys with a bolter. So I could field either units with Plague Marine units, squads with the standard weapons, or I can make them melee oriented or mixed or ranged oriented, etc. But I think this is the way to go with Plague Marines if you like them. The Poxwalkers are durable, they have objectives secure, and they can be good melee damage dealers, especially with some stratagems, and they can be buffed by Typhus, and they are a very cheap unit that is very durable and can hold objectives. Their biggest problem is that they are quite slow and they are not so easy to move up the field. But in my collection, I have 60 Poxwalkers. I think I'm quite okay. I can fill 3 full units if I wanted to, or maybe a couple of 10-man units to just to fill out points and keep the backfield objectives. The cultists are also a cheap unit, but they are quite low durability. They can do infantry actions, but they don't have objective secured. And I think probably it's better to go with Plague Marines and Poxwalkers as the troop options for your Death Guard armies. In my collections, I have 20 unpainted cultists in the shed somewhere. I haven't taken time to paint them. I'm focusing more on completing my Plague Marines and my Poxwalkers. Moving on to the elite choices and looking at the squads we have as elite infantry squads, we can start with the Blightlord Terminators. The Blightlord Terminators are a very popular unit, and they have the highest durability of all our foot units, let's say. They are only doing average damage compared to some other units, and typically they are lower damage output than Plague Marines, even if we include the special weapons like blight launchers, Reaper autocannons, spewers, etc. The deep strike ability of the Terminators is good. The 4+ inval save is good, and now they are faster than they were before. So they can be useful to contest objectives, do actions in the opponent's deployment zone, and stay alive. And they are very durable. I have 10 of them in my collection with a mix of special weapons. But to be honest, I prefer using Death Shroud Terminators and Plague Marines, which brings us over to the Death Shroud Terminators. The Death Shroud Terminators have become more interesting in this edition. They are very strong in melee and they pack a very solid punch, 450 points to bring the smallest unit of 3. And their durability is second only to the Blight Lords. They have their scythes have a dual profile, so they can do very good damage against both tough opponents and weaker opponents. And I have two 3-man squads in my collection, and I'm planning to use them more now. Previously, their main use was to screen Mortarion, but now they have a very good use on their own, and they, in my opinion, and with my first test battles, I think they really performed very well. The possessed are faster than our Terminators. They have a 7-inch move, but they cannot deep strike. They are good in melee, but not as good as the Death Shroud. They are difficult to transport. They cannot be in a Rhino. They are not so easily to deliver as the Terminators, and I don't have them in my collection, let's say. And I think you could maybe find a use for them, and they are quite faster and so on. But I would prefer the Terminators over the possessed. Then if we look at our elite characters, we have, as I said in the overview, we have 5 quite interesting elite characters with interesting auras. They have access to some good relics and they have some abilities. They can have very strong synergies, especially with our Marines, Terminators, and other core units in our army. One of them, the one maybe more standing out now in this codex, is the Taliman. He's really great. He can give our army command points during the game, and he can really boost the range damage of core units. When he has the Tollkeeper relic, he can boost Marines and their Dreadnoughts and etc. And those units can multiply their damage output. So he's really an interesting guy to bring, and also gives you, let's say, free command points during the game. The Foul Blightspawn was one very popular unit before the Codex, and still he's very good. He has his flamer weapon is very good at short range shooting, and with access to some interesting relic, he has a very powerful aura that negates the opponents charging our units the ability to fight first, ensuring that our units can fight first in melee, which can be really helpful. Our units can strike very tough in melee, take out a lot of opponents, and then receive much less damage when the Foul Blightspawn with his aura is supporting them. The Biologus Putrefier that you get in the Combat Patrol box is also good. He can boost the melee damage and the grenades of our units, and especially then in combination with our Plague Marines, they have the grenades that can be buffed by the Biologus, and they can do much more in melee when the Biologus is close by and helping them. The Plague Surgeon can heal our infantry and give a feel no pain aura to our infantry. So he's good to increase the durability, but I don't think he's as good as, for example, the Taliman or some of the others here, but he could be useful as well in a list. And the Noxious Blightbringer, which was very helpful in the previous, before the Codex, I think he can make our core units a bit faster, but now he's not as strong as he was previously. So in my opinion, the Taliman and the Blightspawn are the 2 strongest characters, but you can make some interesting builds and you can have some interesting synergies with any of them. And in my collection, I have over the years, over the time I've gathered, so I have at least one of each. I think I have two Blightspawn. I even have 2 Taliman for some reason. So let's continue to the Dreadnoughts. So looking at the elites, there are Dreadnoughts. We have the Hellbrute, and this is our Death Guard standard Dreadnought, and these units can do okay damage in ranged and melee, and they are core units, so they can do something, and they are a cool model to have. However, they suffer in durability because it doesn't have any invul save, so they are quite vulnerable to high damage opponent vehicle weapons. Can be fun to use, however, are usually prefer to use something else. So the 4 in my collection, they are standing on a shelf somewhere. In the elites for this category, we have some Forge World alternatives, and I've the Contemptor Dreadnought from Forge World is really interesting. It's a core unit and can do very, very good long-range damage together with the Talisman, for example. But it costs command points to include, as well as being a Forge World model. It's quite expensive in terms of real real money, and you need to buy the specific weapons, etc., by the side. So probably this guy would be in the meta right now. However, I don't have Forge World units in my collection, and I also did the math on the Leviathan Dreadnought. Is more costly and expensive than the Contemptor, and this is probably something as a new player. It's better maybe to stay away from the Forge World things and then add them at some later stage when you have your core, the base of the army prepared, let's say, collected. So if we move to the fast attack, here we have some interesting choices. We have the 30 blow drone. So this is a fast and durable flying drone with several interesting weapons that you have 3 varieties of them, and especially the one with a flesh mower is as ghastly as it sounds, and it can do really a lot in melee. And it's adding some badly needed movement, and in the Death Guard army they can operate, they are quite durable and they can operate by themselves, and they can harass enemy units. They can be good to score secondary objectives on the table, harass enemy weaker move units, etc. They can fly. So I have 5 in my collection with various configurations, and probably it would be good maybe to magnetize some of them, so you have, let's say, you can equip different weapons. The Mephitic Blightholder is also a fast and durable demon engine with some good anti-vehicle weapons. You don't have any weapon options for this little guy. You can take several in one unit. However, with the new Codex, now it has gotten currently a high price increase, making it less efficient. So it's 40% more expensive now than it was before. And you can still bring it, and it can probably do some okay damage and so on, but it's not an auto include like it was before the Codex and the new point increase dropped. But still it could do something, and previously the meta was a lot of those 3x3 of those units, for example, could do a lot of damage and they could be healed and etc. But these synergies have been a bit nerfed now. Then we have the Chaos Spawn. As for fast attack, it's a fast food squad with very high melee damage, and you can take this. You can have a squad of 1 for only 23 points. It can move quite fast, and it can do a lot of damage, and it's quite durable. But there is no means of quick delivery. I think you could make some interesting builds and some interesting armies with this. Problem also is to find, you need to find these models, and they are not so Death Guard. Maybe you need to add and make them a little bit more Death Guard looking. And then in the fast attack from Forge World models, we have the Greater Blight Drone, and this is the fastest of the fast units. It would have a 14-inch movement, and it's cheaper than the Blow Drone and the Blight Hauler. And I would like to include some in my collections if I could find them at a good price for maybe some used models, or maybe make a Blow Drone look like the Blight Drone. But it can basically harass the enemy, and it's more fast, and it's easier to score secondary objectives with this unit rather than the Blow Drones. And then moving to the heavy support category, here we have I think a unit that probably would benefit on all our collections, the Plaguebear Scroller. It's one of my personal favorites. It's very durable, one of our most durable units, and it has a very good damage output. With the entropy cannons and the mortar, it can provide long-range support, anti-vehicle and anti-tough enemy units. The Plaguebear Scroller can stay in the background, shooting even at hidden targets with a mortar. So it provides some good long-range support. That's quite versatile. If you equip the speeders on the Plaguebear Scroller, it would be making for a more short-range support, and it can block the movement of opponents, etc., and move it up the field and try to do a lot of damage closer by. But I think I prefer using it in the long-range role. Probably best to have 3 in the collection and have them magnetized, so you can swap the weapons as you see fit. And then we have the Defiler. It's less durable than the Plague Scroller and less damage in long range per points. It has some nice melee damage and it's quite an intimidating model, and I think it would be interesting to build it in such a way that it can shoot, but also that it has a potent melee weapons, and then it can be used to move fast upfield and engage with the enemy. And then we have the Chaos Land Raider and the Chaos Predator. So those are more mainstream shared Chaos units. They can do something, but they are not as durable or as, let's say, damaging as the Plaguebear Scroller or the Defiler. So normally, yeah, I would prefer using, at least in this category, I would prefer to use the Plaguebear Scroller. And then in the other units, let's say we have the transport category. Here we have the Chaos Rhino, which is a good and cheap unit to transport Plague Marines and their supporting characters upfield quickly. Can then, after it disembarks its content, it can be used to go ahead and spread the contagion of the army, but it's not super durable, however. So there is some alternative in Forge World, the Terrax Drill, and this has the ability to deep strike with its content, so it can make a safe delivery of, for example, Plague Marines and their support characters in the opponent's area if there is space and the opponent hasn't blocked off all the access, let's say. But additionally, unlike the Rhino, the Drill poses a threat in itself in both melee and shooting damage. The downside, of course, is being a Forge World model costing some real cash. But it would be interesting because it would add a dimension that otherwise the Death Guard army doesn't have a very quick deep striking platform, transport. And then the new addition to the collection, the Fortification, the Miasmic Malignifier. So this is an interesting way to put a terrain piece for 75 points and to put a large area of the board within contagion range and provides cover to our own units. So this can be quite strategically interesting on the tabletop. And as you saw, I just cut my box and I'm looking forward to assembly the Miasmic Malignifier. And then finally, if we look at some army examples and just give you some overall idea, some flavor, this would be some sort of army that's basically quite mainstream Death Guard. You have some Poxwalkers and Plague Marines as your troops, Poxwalkers to keep the backfield objectives. Here we have a Tallyman and a Plague Marine squad more for long range damage. Here maybe a Chaos Rhino with some other Plague Marines more melee oriented with the Foul Blightspawn and the Plague Caster taking over some objective. We have some Plaguebear Scrollers in the backfield shooting at opportunity targets and providing the long-range fire support for our other units. We have some 30 blow drones, maybe with the speeders or mowers to move ahead and harass the enemy, contest objectives. And here we have the Lord of Contagion and Death Shroud Terminators deep striking from the turn 2, trying to take over and do some damage here for the opponent. So this could be, let's say, a quite vanilla styled Death Guard army. And of course, I'm not saying this is the only way. You could have Mephitic Lightholders, you could have other characters, but this could be a Plague Marine, Plaguebear Scroller, Blow Drone, Death Shroud type of build. And then, for example, another way to go, for example, could be to have a more Terminator and Poxwalkers list. We can have Mortarion added in a list. Of course, he takes quite a significant portion of the cost of the point cost of the army, but Mortarion in himself can do very lot of damage, and he can be taking a lot of focus of the opponent on himself and then allowing for the other units to do their job. In this case, we have the Poxwalkers maybe holding the objectives. We still have the Plaguebear Scrollers in the backfield to shoot the opponents. Here we have a Daemon Prince with wings, escorted by 30 blow drones to present another threat on another flank rather than, for example, Mortarion. And here we're using Blightlord Terminators, deep striking to take objectives and do their things on the table. But of course, there are there is, of course, a very huge variety of army examples, but here are some examples to think about. So, reaching to the summary and final thoughts of this video, the Death Guard is a very resilient army with some decent damage in mostly medium range and in melee combat. The Death Guard is a bit slow, so some fast units, some deep striking units, and some transports are helpful to counteract this slowness. There we have access to lots of cool looking models and interesting units to choose from. Not, of course, the variety that the Space Marine has, but more than some other armies. And I think a lot of our units are quite interesting to use and fun. We have, of course, the ability to field a Demon Primarch. Not all the other Space Marines chapters or Chaos Marines have their Primarch still alive, let's say. And if you can find the 8th edition boxes, the start boxes, they offer a very good entry point to Death Card collection. And in my opinion, it's better than the 9th Combat Patrol box. But even with the 9th Combat Patrol box, you would be able to get a good start to your Death Card collection, and then you would need to add some more units as also you try to play them, and maybe get some more, watch some battle reports, see some of the reviews, and maybe start building your collection from some good start base. And then, as I said in the beginning, for more in-depth unit reviews and tactics, you can take a look at the other channel videos in General Yanis Death Card Tactics. I've been reviewing most of the units I've been talking about in this video in much more detail and much more math, and where I can show you the durability and the weapons, so you make some well-educated choices while building your army. So with these words, this summarizes the video. If you like this video, please press like, leave some comments. If you have some questions, please leave in the comments below. Let me know what your thinking is starting as a new player in Death Guard, or is something else you want to see explained, or maybe some thoughts around. If you please subscribe to the channel, where you can find a lot of more information for Death Guard. And if you want to support my work even further, please visit my Patreon page and support me in that way. And with these words, General Yanis is signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.